Hello, everybody. Bo Billington with Finding That Next Gear. Got Josh Sweeney here. Josh, super excited for you to join, man. Thanks so much for coming on.
Yeah, I'm excited to be on. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, so we've known each other for probably about a year now. We met at an entrepreneur group, which of course is comprised of entrepreneurs. And so I know that you're like an entrepreneur through and through. But purpose of today is really kind of talk about you, your background. How folks take a company from like ideation and inception to like scale and maybe actual sale, which is something you've
Yeah,
done. So super pumped to have you on, man. Thanks so much for joining.
awesome. I'm ready.
Yeah, so currently you've got two companies, my understanding. So FounderScale, which I'm quite familiar with, as well as Epic Culture. And you actually had an exit in 2016 of a CRM professional services company that I believe stood up sugar installations. Is that
Yeah,
correct?
yeah, that's it.
Okay. Now, how do you have time to have two different companies to run? Talk to me a little bit.
Um, yeah, so I've actually kind of shut down the Epic Culture side. So
Okay.
I decided that you can't run two companies. I
Okay.
don't, at least I can't, Elon Musk can maybe, but there's
Maybe.
more capital involved there. Um, so
Yeah.
yeah, so I'm 100% focused on FounderScale and that organization, and just have a strong belief in focusing in one area. So I've
Sure.
been doing that. Yeah.
It's funny, like as I've gone through my entrepreneurial, life cycle, I guess I've found as well that you can spread yourself too thin, especially with like shiny object syndrome, which is something that I get.
Right.
I'm trying to find focus in my own life, so I can totally appreciate that. So tell us a little bit more about you. Kind of, what do you do for your current organization? What does FounderScale do? Let's dig into that a little bit.
Yeah, sure. So companies FounderScale, and we help businesses go from founder revenue to scalable revenue. So if you look at most owners, founders, entrepreneurs, they generate the majority of the revenue in their organization. And at some point, they get to a point where they want to scale up and not be that primary revenue generator. They want to have an exit one day, and the multiples are a lot better if you're not needed and your
Not the
business is still
business.
closing deals without you. There's
Yeah.
all kinds of reasons a founder wants to scale up. And so we found that a lot of people try to hit the easy button and do lead generation services and work with agencies.
Mhm.
And those all have a purpose, but they're not purpose built to help the founder go from founder revenue to scalable revenue. And so we have a framework that we've put together that really helps us be the guide along that journey. So that's what FounderScale does, is we're the guide along that journey.
Understood. So companies essentially outsourcing, like I guess maybe like the SDR function, sales development representative,
Yeah.
BDR, et cetera. Is that kind of a component to the whole
Yeah,
operation?
that can be a component. And it's ebbed and flowed over the past 2 years. So this company is only 2 years old. It was started after my last exit. And we found a different combination where recently we found a much better product market fit, where we're actually coming on as a fractional CRO. And then we're looking at it as sales and marketing together. And we're becoming that guide that's staying on with the company for much longer periods of time. And when we do that, we also get the opportunity to provide some of the other services based on the budget and the needs of that client. So really, we promote ourselves more as a revenue agency, where we're looking at sales and marketing as one cohesive unit or a revenue team.
Got it. That makes sense. And then what's your target customer from an ARR perspective? Like who are you going after? Any industries specific?
No specific industries, mostly that they're founder led. I would say it's anybody with what we would call a considered purchase. So they, somebody who wants to make a purchase but wants to talk to a salesperson. So we do get some B2C,
Sure.
but it's normally a more expensive B2C purchase where they're not just pulling out a credit card. We work with a lot of B2B professional services organizations. That's probably 80% of our clients are professional services related organizations. And the sweet spot for us is really somewhere around about between 2 and 20 million in revenue. So we have some on the smaller side that we can help out with some different packages. We have some on the higher side, but that 2 to 20 million really seems like the sweet spot where, that founder or founding team is really having this challenge, and they're
Sure.
looking, grow from there.
Yeah, and then of course I would imagine 20 million plus, they're probably going to bring all that in-house majority of the time.
Yeah, there's just a lot bigger budget to go get more, a fractional or even full-time. I mean, at 20 million, you're getting maybe a full-time CMO, CRO,
Sure.
Like that. So there's just more budget for those types of things.
Understood. And so let's talk a little bit about you and what do you do currently for your organization? Are you the face? I mean, I know that you do some consulting still, but how has that evolved over the last 2 years as you guys have continued, your journey and the scale that you're going through currently?
Yeah, so my goal is, like you said, to be the face. So I'm really head of sales and marketing as well as being the president. So I've really built up a good team on the operations side. And that was one lesson learned in my last company was, I'd never quite had the team where didn't have a foot in both sides.
Yeah.
And I knew that for us to scale, I had to go find the operational people, the people on the operations and delivery side that when I closed a deal or when our sales team closed a deal and signed the SOW, we could hand it off and know that that client's taken care of. And so that's a journey. I mean, I'm not saying we've finished that journey,
Sure.
but it's definitely front of mind where the majority of my time is on the sales and marketing side of the house.
Yeah, and it's funny how that evolves as well. I mean, I'm going through something similar myself, where I've always had my hands. It's been a little bit tough for me to pull back a little bit. And over the last year, that's what I've been working on myself. Is like how can I take care of sales, be the face of the company, but then bring in somebody from operations capacity that can take business once it's been closed, kind of through the process and actually deliver. And it's easier said than done because a lot of entrepreneurs, I imagine you're the same, but like this is our baby. And like my work product is very, very important. And it's been a little difficult to relinquish some of that control to other people within my organization.
Yeah, we've definitely gone through different rounds and iterations of like, how do we report up on the quality of that work? How are we checking in with clients on the quality, right? And monitoring that so that, you do feel comfortable signing a scope and turning it over to your team and knowing it's taken care of.
Right.
And then, and the smaller the company is, the harder that is, because if one person churns,
Sure.
you could be back to square one, so those are just the challenges that, a lot of the entrepreneurs we work with have. And I think that's kind of the unique differentiator for us is we really, truly understand that we're not, some large company telling them these things will work for you and completely devoid of the facts that they could churn one person that changes the whole game for them and messes things up. So there's a certain reality to that for entrepreneurs.
Yeah, no, totally. It's continuously in flux, and it's been an interesting journey, both high highs, low lows, but I wouldn't change it for the world. That being said, how long have you been an entrepreneur? I mean, so you've had, from what I understand, maybe 3 companies, but I would imagine probably a couple more. You've already had it. Your goal here is to exit. Like, talk to me a little bit about you and your personality, why you love entrepreneurship.
Yeah, so I have had a few companies. I've had probably, I guess, 3 that made it into the 6-figure territory. 2 into the 7-figure territory. And then, those have been through various iterations as I was growing as an entrepreneur and a founder. I feel like I've always been at least very entrepreneurial, just not growing up with a whole lot. It was, I remember, when they did the fundraisers as a kid, my mom would hand me the box, the chocolate box of the candy bars, and back, way back, they were $1 a piece. I'm sure somebody has a story where they were 35 cents or something, but for us, I think they were $1, and it wasn't like my parents were going to take that bucket, that box to work and sell them. They were like, here, go knock every door for the next 3 neighborhoods. And so when you learn to do that at 7 years old, I guess, there's a little bit of sales spirit in there. And then once you start making the money off of it, cutting lawns and other things like I did and seeing the reward, that probably was a big part of the spark.
Yeah, no, definitely a light bulb moment for most. And I myself kind of have always been entrepreneurial and always wanted to start a company. Never came upon the right idea until 2017. That's a whole different story. But I'd love to hear about kind of your most recent company. And how did you determine product market fit? How did you know there was a need for the solution with FounderScale that you brought to the table?
Yeah, I feel like it's interesting, the product market fit conversation, because I've always been in professional services with add-on software and enhancements and other IP that we do. We build for our client, or we build for us to serve our clients.
Sure.
But the product market fit's a really interesting thing in that, at least for this company, I feel like we only hit it about 3 months ago.
Right.
So when we started it, the crux of it was and backstory is, in my last company that I grew to a few million and sold, I had spent over $300,000 trying sales and marketing tactics that didn't work for our size companies, right? So think the SEO, the ads, the hiring the salespeople, the meeting setters, the agencies, like we went through the whole gamut, right? Just burning up money. And this is over years, right? So you try something, you recoup, you try something else, you recoup.
Mhm.
And after selling that, I was just like, there has got to be a better way. There's got to be a way where somebody is really candid and says, that doesn't work for those size companies. I don't care what everybody's telling you because they're trying to close a deal and sell you on something. Like, what's reality? And so we really embarked on that journey with FounderScale of providing different services, sales and marketing services, and diving down and deciding what works, what doesn't, and why, and being able to back it up, right? I mean, backing it up with data, backing it up with stories and examples. And about 3 months ago, I feel like we really hit a point where the services we provided, the combination, and how we package it hit that product market fit. And then the pitch that we had, people were just raising their hands and being like, that's me. So for example, I was just speaking at the Inc. Founders event the other day, and I'm on a panel, and I get off the panel, and like 5 minutes later, I get a lead. Somebody raised their hand and was like, that's me. That resonated.
Right.
And so I think that was where I really felt like we hit product market fit, where people weren't confused or asking like questions from confusion, like, well, what's this? What's that? And it's like, you could tell there was just, you had to do too much explaining.
Absolutely.
And now, it doesn't feel that way. People just opt in and say, that's the problem I have. I want to go from founder revenue to scalable revenue. I'm the main driver of revenue. I need help. I need somebody on this journey. And so the way that we packaged it up was just fundamentally different than what we did for the past year and a half.
Yeah, product market fit is very fickle, and I feel there's a lot of misunderstanding about what it is and what it's not. And I'd say most companies, it's an iterative process. Like you may have something that's sellable, but it really, I mean, I've been in business for 6 years, and I feel like just within the last year, product market fit is really aligned, stories compelling, and people get it, or they don't get it, which is totally fine. But it really does take a while to kind of hone in on what exactly it is that you're selling. How can you distill that down to something that's very, very easily digestible by somebody that a third grader can understand. And it takes a lot of reps. Like I don't, most companies don't figure out product market fit and then go sell their product. You know what I mean? Like when I jumped out, first 6 months, I worked on this, which made me zero money. And so I had to pivot. And it's been a series of pivots along this 6-year road that have kind of led to where we feel the scaling is really, really happening, which is exciting. But yeah, it's crazy how it sometimes just clicks. And then you're like, we get it. I get it. We're there. So congrats.
Yeah, thank you. It's been a fun journey, and I've had different companies with different services, but I would say that's a really rewarding place to be, where it's like, this can really help, other founders get there, save them a lot of pain and headache and money, and just help them along the way. So that product market fit's been a big piece of that.
Yeah. Well, let's look at it a little bit to the plight of the entrepreneur here, and I'll let you choose your own journey.
Okay.
So I know you've already had an exit, which I would imagine there's some juicier details there.
Right.
But I'll allow you to kind of dig in here where you'd prefer. But like, what was your situation prior to founding, one of your most recent companies? Because I know you married, you have children.
Yeah.
That can be difficult for entrepreneurship. Like I used to joke that barometer of success for me is if I'm still married in 5 years. My wife didn't like that joke,
and your kids still like you. And
yeah, my kids still like me. They know who I am, right? And far, I think I've done okay. What was your situation? I mean, were you in corporate America prior? Did you just get fed up and jump out? Did you have to have a hard conversation with your spouse? Talk to me a little bit about that, because I feel like most people that they don't really get to pull up the covers and see what it's really like, because it could be difficult, man. I didn't make any money for 6 months. Zero.
Right.
That was not fun. That was very uncomfortable.
Yeah, definitely. It's gone through a number of iterations. So I started off in, I won't go through the whole journey, but I started off in telecom, and my first job was, my first business was in infrastructure, wiring, cabling, all this type of stuff, fiber optics. And that was my first 6-figure company. And one day I'm like, okay, I'm done with this. Like I'd been doing it since I was 13. And, on nights and weekends and stuff, and had the opportunity to do that. and made great money. But I'm like, I don't want to be on a ladder. I don't want to be on a construction site. And I'd always had a passion for information security,
Mhm.
and had just had a passion for that through high school and some through college. And so I was like, forget it, I'm making a pivot, and I went into information security. So I ended up working for a few of the top information security firms here in Atlanta, and that was a great journey. Went through that whole journey, and ended up at a CRM company and as a sales engineer. So again, just kind of another pivot where I was like, I really want to be a sales engineer in information security, but I got the opportunity at another tech-based company in CRM space, which was Sugar CRM. And at that point, they actually decided they were going to shut down their entire enterprise sales team and operation, and they were going to pivot the business. And I'm like, man, I'm pretty good at this. I know the sales side, I know the delivery side. I was a top sales engineer, and so I was like, I'll just become a partner. So that was my first 7-figure business, was being a Sugar CRM partner and part of a channel ecosystem in the CRM industry. So just gone through a lot of different changes, and different businesses, all around mostly around sales and technology. Definitely technology as a core piece of that, but it's changed over the years.
So how long did it take you to find success? I mean, that sounds like kind of a home run, right? Where you're you're working with
Yeah.
Sugar, then they decide to pivot, but then you've got this skill set. And so you just essentially plugged into their ecosystem and you
Right.
utilized them as a sales channel and you just work the deals.
Exactly. Yeah, we started working the deals and closing them. And so, I mean, I guess it depends what success is for each person, because it's changed over the years. So like when I graduated, or while I was in college, I think I got out and started working maybe in information security at the time. And I said, if I'm not making 6 figures by 25,
Yeah.
I'm going to go back to school. Like, I'm going to go see what other degrees I can get. What else do I need to do? And so I think that was like my first success, was by 25, I was making 6 figures and in a job that I loved.
Mhm.
And so I think that was kind of the first success from a career perspective. And then the second big success was, growing at Core Systems, my consulting firm, to a few million and having an exit.
Right.
So that was a big success. And I think if you're an ambitious entrepreneur, if you're not content like I am, some people are content, and I appreciate that in them.
Yeah.
I wish I could be more content sometimes,
Sure.
but I'm always looking for the next challenge. And so the second big journey was like, hey, can I build a second multi-million dollar plus company from scratch? Can I do it again? Right. So there's a lot of people who've done it once, but how many have done it twice? So I'm just moving the bar for myself, because of mainly for the growth that comes from that. So
Sure.
the growth is the driving factor.
Yeah, it's interesting too how you talk about how do you define success and how that continuously changes and evolves. I felt the same when I was in college. I got to make X amount, then you make X amount. It's like, okay, well, what next? And then to me, it ended up being quality of life was kind of more
Yeah.
important. Of course, money supports quality of life in a lot of situations, but I've changed that as well. And over the last 6 years of my business, I've changed what success looks like year to year. I mean, hell, it's almost like quarterly. I'm changing what that looks like
Yeah.
in different metrics, which is fun. Well, that's super awesome, man. There like, what about So have you ever lost the love for entrepreneurship? And it sounds like there's times where it flows.
Yeah.
I've been there, but for me, candidly, going back to corporate America is just not. It's not an option. I'm much more content here than I've been. But is there ever a time where you thought about hanging it up? I mean, is that why one exits a company, or have you thought about walking away from entrepreneurship just in general for greener grass?
Yeah, I mean, definitely. I mean, when you start a new company and there's no, like you said, there's no income coming in, or very little, right? You're not getting paid. You're not paying yourself maybe at that point at the start of the company what you were getting paid when you were 25 years old. So you're
Right.
like, wait, these numbers don't work, right? I was way further along.
Yeah, my income went like this.
Right. And so, that ebbs and flows. I would think, I mean, there's only been a few instances where, the passion, changed.
Yeah.
So, had started the last company, had multiple successful, really good years. And then we had our first bad year. And
Right.
that was like, how much can you really grind? How much stress can you really handle to push through this? And so we went and got quotes or, estimates and offers to sell the company. We were looking at all that, and I'm looking at the offers. I'm like, there's no way I worked this hard to only get this far. It just wasn't there. And so I just doubled down and then had a great, best year ever after that year. So there's just some hard years that, the world tries to break you. It feels like, and if you don't let it, then oftentimes, it's darkest before the dawn, Renaissance after the plague is kind of what it feels like in entrepreneurship.
No, it really can. I mean, when I first started, I mentioned I went 6 months without a paycheck, and then I was really grinding a lot at that time. I mean, it was early, it was night, most nights, weekends. I mean, just around the clock. And I did that for about 6 months or so, which paid dividends. It truly did, but it's not sustainable. I mean, about a year and a half in or 2 years in, I thought to myself, I don't know if I could ever go back to that dark place that I had to go to get the business to where it needed to be out of a valley. And it's really difficult. And I've found in that journey, and kind of this is the premise of the podcast, like, how do people find that next gear? And for me, I think perseverance is one of the biggest traits in entrepreneurs, and that separates the doers from the don'ts. But I'd love to kind of hear what your thoughts are from a trait perspective. Like, what inherent traits do entrepreneurs have, and what do they need to have in order to really get through the tough times? Because it's not all puppy dogs and rainbows. As I mean, it's really the second you think something great has happened. I mean, generally, like I'll lose a client or like something else happens that I've got to fix. It's not all happiness.
Yeah, I think perseverance is a great way to put it. Another one, I think grit's another one I hear where it's just like, you just got to grind it out, and you have to be able to push through some really trying things and trying times. And like you said, after you push through that one, a year later, there's going to be another one, and you almost, I would say after this many years though, after, I don't know, 12 years in it, you start to get used to it, which I think is
eerie. It's eerie.
It's eerie, but it's good and it's bad, because it's like, after a while, you're just like, I know it's coming. I'm just going to push through it like always. And I think you're at that point when you can do that, you're at a different level, like you've excelled to be able to get through the bad times and not let it tear you down or anything else, or quit. And if you don't quit, you can't lose. The game's not over.
No, listen, I totally agree. And I've noticed that as well. It's like, I try to be, like reflect back and think, be self-aware. And I've noticed things as well that have happened in the past, and now they don't bother me nearly as much as they would have just 6 months or a year ago. Still, my goal is to sell this business eventually, but I'm still, not sure if I would ever want to start a company from scratch again. Honestly, like I don't know, because it was so much harder than I thought it would be. I mean, no brand equity, no funding. People don't know anything about you as a person or your business. And it's a lonely world out there sometimes. So that's still a question mark for me. But you have a co-founder, and do you think that could be a game changer for entrepreneurs? I mean, because sometimes it's a good thing, other times it's actually a really, really horrible thing.
Yeah, that's a really interesting one. Because you hear a lot of the horror stories about co-founders, but I think there's a lot of things that can be put in place it's usually like the first co-founder, right? The first co-founder somebody gets is where the horror story comes from. And after that, if they're still open to having a co-founder, then they put the right precautions in place, right? They put the right standards in place, the job descriptions, everything's better communicated. And I think that's where you really get the bigger wins, because I've analyzed a lot of different companies, worked with a lot of companies with what we do. And it's really interesting that the ones that grow faster seem to be more stable, get there with a little less headaches. A lot of times you get 2 and 3 co-founders that are working together. And I think it's just interesting to see, like, how can people work together to get there? And if they don't have a co-founder and are adamant that they can't, and the business is stagnating, you start to wonder, well, why is that, right? Is that person that hard to work with? So it almost could throw up some red flags as well, of like, or maybe things are going good where it's at and they don't want to make any more money, and it's more of a content situation, right? So there's lots of different areas, and I know everybody has their story on that one. But yeah, I'm more the person of leaning towards, I've already grown one the hard way with no co-founders. And, you know, I would rather have a bigger, you know, a smaller piece of a much bigger pie that's
Yeah.
bigger in the end, and get there a little with hopefully less stress if everything's structured correctly.
Yeah, rising tide. But it basically sounds like
Yeah.
you need to get burned at least once, and then lesson learned.
Or have good advisors that give you all that information up front. You know?
Yeah, and I've done the same, man. I've
Yeah.
you know, found this company and grown it to where it is currently myself. I've got a partner now, but like it's tough. It's tough when you're alone. It really,
Yeah.
you know, almost need like a support group. So just a couple more questions, man. I really appreciate your
Sure.
time. If you could go back in time and give yourself like one piece of advice prior to starting a company, any company, what would that be? Because I mean, I could write a book on the things that I did wrong.
Right. Prior to starting a company, I think I would have read a lot more,
Yeah.
and had more mentors along the way. I think
Good one.
being open to seeing a shiny object, going and taking the time to research it and run it by mentors and get more input before you just jump in feet first on certain things could have saved me a lot of headaches. And there's a lot of people out there willing to mentor. And I don't think I really got to a point where I utilized that until a lot later. And I'm talking about mentors, like people who have done it, you know, somebody with a that is a founder that's been down that road, you know, that's providing advice from a place of experience, not from opinion. So I think that's one, is just, you know, a lot more mentorship and personal education.
Yeah, so I'd say half the folks that I asked that question to, either it's like a tribe, mentor,
Yeah.
this, that, and the other. But that's a great response, and I totally agree. I feel like I waited not too long, but like I wish I got help earlier. But to your point, like not opinion help, but help based in facts. Somebody literally has like grown a similar company to mine at a much quicker clip and exited. That's the person I want to talk to. You know,
Yeah.
all
Everybody's got opinions, you know, and I'm like, tell me a story when you did it and how that worked. That's what I really need to know. When somebody says, well, here's what we did, and it was a disaster, I'm like, that's valuable. You know, like,
no,
got it.
Totally. I found myself when I first started, I was asking everybody, like they were like in corporate America for like 20 years, and I was asking their advice, and it's like these folks had unlimited budgets, you know, and like just complete and utter mismatch, you know. So at any rate, all right. So we're gonna hit the lightning round real quick. Just you know, learn a little bit more about you, Josh. So what's your favorite part about being your own boss?
Controlling your time.
Good one.
Yeah, controlling my time.
Agreed. What's your least favorite part of being your own boss?
Everything stops with you, right? It's extreme ownership. You own every single outcome.
Yeah, that's a great response. And I feel, for me, I think it's like decision fatigue. Like I'll make so many decisions where my wife is like, "Hey, where do you want to go to dinner on Friday?" I'm like, I can't process. I don't know. You just
just
make that decision for me. You know, just put it on my calendar. I'll be there. What's your biggest success?
Yeah, probably my exit. You know, growing a company to a few million and having an exit is definitely a pretty big success.
Yeah. Well, the flip side of that question is failure. What's your biggest failure?
Biggest failure. Biggest failure.
And if you haven't had any, that's awesome.
That's no, okay. I've definitely have them. I was trying to I was waiting too long for that one. No, I think my biggest failure is was really just, you know, biggest failure is like really understanding and motivating people. I had to do a lot of research. I'm very just more engineering minded, results, numbers driven. And there's a lot of value to the other half, right? The relationship side, you know, and how you coach and how you deal with people with different personalities and things like that. And so for me, you know, I think my biggest failure early on was thinking it was all results, you know, pushing really, really hard for just results and leaving, you know, the other important pieces on the table. So that was more of just a personality trait that I had to learn from.
Yeah, like how do you motivate people? How do you work with people? And I don't know if that was the impetus for starting a culture or what. But like, I'm finding myself too, like we did a personality assessment on my team a month ago, and it was super interesting. And Yeah, it was actually one of my teammates' suggestions, and it's really allowed us to kind of work more effectively with each other. Because we all see the world differently. I'm not super like I care about results, but like the way I drive is a little bit different than everybody else.
Yeah.
All right. So hardest part about owning your own business. I know you mentioned the buck stops with you, but like, what's the hardest part about having a business?
Um, I think for me, the hardest part is the people side. You
Yeah.
know, it's really just, learning and managing people, their expectations, getting what the best out of them for the team,
Right.
having them collaborate with the team. And there's just a lot of dynamics to that, right? With people's home life and what their career is and what they think their opportunities are. That's probably the hardest part.
Yeah, interesting. I'm in the people business, and
Yeah.
number one complaint, or not complaint, but issue that most companies have is finding the right talent because people they're just difficult. It's super difficult.
Yeah.
Personality dynamics, et cetera. I get it. All right, last question for you. Where can people find you?
So you can go to founderscale.com and contact me there. You can also find me on LinkedIn, Josh Sweeney.
Awesome. Josh, really appreciate it, man. Congrats on all the success. And I've worked with you with FounderScale, and just a quick plug. Extreme consultant, and I'd highly recommend your services to anybody out there that needs some help with scaling and revenue. So thanks for being on.
Awesome.
Really appreciate it.
Thank you so much.